Good evening. My name is Faisad and I'm an attorney, and I'm with the Better Informed Housing Corporation here in Chicago. We're here on CAN TV. With me is Mr. Carl Dreyer. He's an attorney at law. If you want to call us, this is a live stream, so you can call us at 312-738-1060. We're out taking calls, so call at any time and ask any questions that you have. We're going to talk today about housing issues. And what Better Informed Housing Corporation has done, and we've dedicated our time to working on educating the public, to build our future, to save the community, and help the neighbors. And we're a nonprofit located at 218 North Jefferson, Suite 103. You can reach us at 312-533-2688. Or you can email us at neighbors@betterinformed.org. So we're here today, and Carl is an attorney, as am I. Thanks for joining us, Carl.
Thank you very much, Faisal. Can you give me a brief introduction to real estate closings on the buyer's side?
Sure. So part of our educational process is to educate people on real estate issues that they'll face on a regular basis, everyday issues as well as once-in-a-lifetime issues. And one of those is when you buy a new house, and so that would make it a real estate closing for buyers, so a buyer side closing. So essentially a buyer side closing is the purchase of a real estate property, whether it's residential or commercial, and we're going to talk about residential today, is the purchase of a property for residential purposes, usually your first-time home. And there's a lot of documents and there's a lot of things that go with this transaction. And we'll cover most of it today. We can't cover all of it. We'll cover most of it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to give a call. So usually the real estate closing on a buyer's side involves you finding a property that you like and then putting an offer to purchase it, called a real estate contract. You can sometimes work with a real estate agent, or you can do that on your own if you find a property, for example, for sale by owner, or you see a sign on the side of the street in front of the house. So once you find the place that you like, you have a real estate contract between you and the seller, which indicates the terms of the purchase price, and other contingencies that gives you time to actually close. So depending on your financial wherewithal, you can either pay all cash for the property, which most people don't. Usually they get a mortgage and they get a loan from a bank or some other lender that will lend them money to buy the property. So that involves a couple other, bunch of different things. So it usually requires credit score, financial ability to make payments, in order to get the loan. But in terms of the real estate contract, it'll give you time to do an inspection. It'll time for you to hire an attorney to review the contract. And it's called the attorney review. Then it'll give you time to actually get the mortgage. So all those are involved in the real estate contract, and most of the time you'll have a real estate agent that'll help walk you through all those things, and the real estate agent should be able to help you understand each of those points and terms.
Okay. Now, if I'm looking to buy a property, what's the first thing that I typically do before I begin looking for the property that I want?
Well, the first thing you should do is make sure you have financing available. So if you are usually you get a pre-approval process. It's when you call a mortgage broker or a mortgage lender or your local bank and tell them that you are looking to buy a house. And what they'll do is they will look at your financial life and figure out what your ability is in terms of paying back a mortgage. How much, based on your income and your credit score, what you would qualify for a mortgage.
Okay. Now, are there any websites that I could turn to give myself knowledge that I could use in working with a realtor?
There's a couple different websites. There's websites about the property that talks about once you find the property. But if you're looking for a realtor, I would find someone who knows the neighborhood you want to be in. So someone who's already maybe advertising that neighborhood or familiar with that neighborhood. The other good thing is to find someone to refer them to you. Referrals are a good source. So, and if you don't know anybody, you can just go online and Google and look for real estate agents. I personally, and this is not a plug for anybody, but I like Redfin. I think Redfin is a great website that allows me to search properties and get a feel for areas that I want to go into and the pricing and what I should be looking at, it's a good precursor to start to find something. And they have their own agents, but it can be any agent, any real estate agent that can help you out, that you feel comfortable with, who's going to be patient with you, because buying that first house is a big step.
So once I find the property that I'm looking for, what else do I need to do?
So you've gotten you found your agent, you have a pre-approval, and now you are looking for a property, and then you found the property, right?
Okay.
So that's where the real estate contract that I spoke about earlier comes into play, and your real estate agent will come up with they'll help you find what is a good price for the property.
Okay.
And that varies from what other properties are selling for, the condition of the property itself, what you've been approved for, so how much money you have available to you to borrow. I would not recommend borrowing the full amount, so sometimes a little bit less than that, how much down payment you have. So a lender's not going to lend you 100% of, they might, but usually they don't lend you 100% of the purchase price. They will lend you a percentage, usually 80 or 90%. If it's an FHA loan, they may lend you up to 97% of the purchase price. So the property that you're looking to buy is also a function of what the price of the property is, how much your down payment is that you can afford, and what your monthly payments can be as to what the bank says you can afford to pay. And usually, for a good frame of reference, your total housing payment, so mortgage, principal and interest, insurance, homeowner association fees if it's a homeowners association, taxes, shouldn't be more than 35% of your total income.
Okay.
Now, banks will usually let you go up to 55%, but I wouldn't recommend that.
How long does this whole process of buying a property typically take?
Well, usually the longest time is the amount of finding the place. But once you found it, usually you can do a closing from the time that the contract is received by the time the contract is executed by all the parties.
Yeah.
By executed, I mean signed by both the seller and the buyer. And the day of closing, which is the day that you actually buy the property, and now you have title, or you can take the keys and you own it, usually it's about 30 to 45 days. Okay. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. There's a lot of different factors, but we're going to focus today on just a straight, regular real estate buyer's closing. With few complications.
Okay. Well, how much involvement does the buyer have? I mean, do the lawyers take over this process, or does the buyer have a lot of work to do in this?
So the attorneys, the first couple periods that pop up are and the most important ones are the attorney review period and the inspection review period.
Okay.
The inspection period is when you hire an inspector to go out and actually look at the property. Now, people don't think this is really important, but a good inspector is so critical. I can't tell you how many times I've had inspectors who don't know what they're doing will go through. They will look at this property and they'll say, oh, everything's fine, or they'll pick a couple random things here and there, but they won't look at things that are absolutely necessary. So people skimp out and like, oh man, the inspector's going to charge me $300 or $400. It's too much. I want to find the guy's going to charge me $150 or $200.
Sure.
You literally get what you pay for.
Right.
You are about to spend upwards of $100,000 or more, whatever your purchase price, sometimes up to $500,000, sometimes $1 million. Spend the money on a really good inspector who's going to run through every gut of the property from A to Z and inspect everything to make sure that there's no problems.
Got it.
Because after this inspection period, you're done. You cannot go back in and say, oh, I want you to fix this and fix that and fix this and fix that. You could, but it's going to create a problem, and most likely you're going to end up eating that. And if it's after closing, you can pretty much forget it. You're not going to get any help unless you buy a warranty or it's a new construction. But I would say the inspection up front is critical. You have 5 days to do that after the contract is signed. Okay? The next piece is you want to use your attorney. Now, this is another one that everybody skims down on, which cracks me up, because you're investing the rest of your life in this property, and the last thing you want is some mistake to go wrong or something to happen in your closing. But some people want to cheap out. They'll spend, they'll put $20,000 down and buy a $200,000 house, but they don't want to pay an extra $50 for their lawyer, which is really short-sighted. As my father tells me, it's penny wise and dollar foolish. The attorney is important, because the attorney is going to make sure that there's certain things in the contract are protected. The attorney's job is to protect your earnest money, so to make sure you don't lose the earnest money. To make sure that if you need more time to get to, which we'll talk about in a minute, the mortgage contingency period. That's important. If you don't have, because you could miss out on these periods, and then you lose the opportunity to raise that to get out of the contract, or to protect you and get credits or money back or reductions in the purchase price. So the attorney is a very critical piece to manage the buyer side of the transaction, okay? To make sure the tax prorations, we'll talk about that in a minute, right? So the attorney review period is 5 days, and the attorney will go through the contract, and they'll make sure that certain things are corrected or changed or modified.
Okay.
But you can't modify the price, and you can't modify other terms, you know, there are some other terms you can't modify technically. But, of course, there are ways to do that. And a good lawyer will know how to be able to manage and adjust those terms and change those terms for you, for your benefit. So, for example, if the property you're paying $300,000 for only appraises for $125,000, you have ways to get out of the contract, but an appraisal is very helpful to make sure that if there's an appraisal provision in your agreement, then you're going to make sure that you're not going to get stuck with a property that doesn't appraise. Usually this impacts people who are buying cash, because if you don't appraise, the lender's not going to finance, and that would be something we could use into the mortgage contingency provision.
Okay.
So let's talk about the mortgage contingency provision, since I stepped into that.
Sure.
So a mortgage contingency provision is a provision in the contract that gives the buyer time to come up with the money from their lender to purchase the property. So the lender will go through their due diligence. They'll look at the title, they'll look at the property, they'll look at your credit, verify certain income, certain aspects of the property, certain aspects of your credit history, to make sure that you are a credit-worthy buyer, and that they'll give you a decent interest rate. And your contract will state what that interest rate is, that it will not be above a certain number. Now, what I advise my clients is that number should be as low as possible.
Okay.
Okay, the interest rate on the contract should not be more than, 3% or 3.5% or 4%, right? So what you have to be careful from your real estate agent, because the one person in this entire deal that is working just for you with no other pecuniary interest, pecuniary meaning beneficial, financial, or any other interest, is your attorney. The real estate agent, as great as they are, their benefit is the commission. So they want to make sure that you can't back out of the deal and that you close, because they spend a lot of time helping you find this place.
Okay.
They don't want to make it easy. So they usually bump that number up, or they push that number higher. Okay? If you're going to do a contract, bring that number low. I mean, reasonably, but not too low, but just enough. So if the market rate is 4%, I would put 3.75 or 3.8. Because if that's, try not to go above what the current market rate is. If you can go at or below, it would be even better. And the reason that is, it gives me an opportunity as an attorney, or it gives your attorney the opportunity to get out of the contract based on not getting a mortgage for that interest rate.
Okay.
So if you get an interest rate that you don't like, that becomes a basis for you to get out of the contract, so long as it's not less than what was already in the contract. So I've seen agents put in 5% or 6% when the going market rate is 4 or 3 3/4. So just be aware of that. Okay. So your mortgage contingency also says how much you have to come with a down payment. So if you put a higher dollar amount, so you make it at 95%, I would recommend 95 or 90%, nothing less than that. Even if you're qualified you have the money to put down more. What you have to put down more has nothing to do with the actual negotiation of the contract.
Oh, okay.
So the mortgage contingency is usually 30 days. And you have 30 days to get a clear to close, which is the lender saying they'll fund and will give the money for the project, or give money for you to buy the property. The attorney's job is to make sure that that date does not expire, because that date is what you would be using to keep extending in case you can't get a mortgage. If you can't get a mortgage, that becomes the basis for cancellation of the contract and you getting your earnest money back because you fell within their contingency period. So that is the contract.
Now, when we have a closing date set, say for example, me being a busy litigator, I have an emergency motion come up on the day we're supposed to do the closing. Do I have to be present at the closing?
So you as the buyer do not need to be present at closing.
Okay.
And so one option that you have is what we call doing and I will put this on the screen for everybody to see, is you can do it's called a Illinois statutory short form power of attorney. Now, you can do a power of attorney, which essentially says you're giving your attorney the right to sign the documents on your behalf, okay? And in it will have certain requirements as to what you're authorizing your attorney to do, and you can restrict it to only the specific property and the specific transaction. So why is this important? So you can do a power of attorney, and your attorney can sign documents, or let's say you can't make it, but your wife can be there. She can sign on your behalf as well. So that is an option for you to do. To do a power of attorney and get that approved will require authorization from your lender. And just quickly, let everybody know, take a quick moment. This is the Better Informed Housing Corporation. We are an Illinois nonprofit organization providing education and information to communities about real estate, residential and commercial, and helping you in all your real estate needs. If you have any information, you can call 312-533-2688 or email neighbors@betterinformed.org, or you can visit us at betterinformed.org. And if you have any questions tonight, feel free to call us. We're at 312-738-1060. My name is Faisad and Carl, and I have with me Carl Dreyer. So you were asking a question about, what the next piece is in terms of binding so what's the lender going to want when we close?
Right.
So when we get to a closing, there's a whole slew of documents that the buyer will be signing. Okay? For one, it's the adjustable rate note. Okay? That's if your rate is adjustable, or just a straight promissory note. And the note shows in the terms. So it'll show the terms, what you're paying, how much you're paying, what's the interest rate, what the payments are, when you're going to make payments, and how long the note is going to be for.
Okay.
So that note establishes that you owe the money.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
The next piece of the transaction that you have to sign, and usually it's both the husband and wife, they'll be signing, is a mortgage. Now this is a sample commercial mortgage, right? A residential mortgage will be a little bit different, but it will show the full document, which indicates, this will say, it will have the legal description, and it'll say that you're granting the bank, the lender, a right to take the property. It'll have the address, it'll have the tax ID number, so it'll have a couple different documents, information on the mortgage.
Okay.
Now what that does is, it says if you don't pay, then the lender that you borrowed the money from has a right to come and take and foreclose on your property. It's kind of scary, so just make sure you make your payments and don't miss any payments.
Right.
So now that we've established, those documents you'd be signing, probably about 100 pages, right? It's a lot of signing, a lot of initialing. The lender wants you to sign various different aspects, and a good attorney will walk you through each and every one of those documents so you understand them. Okay? That's very important. So they should be able to explain to you every aspect of the transaction, which is why paying an attorney a little bit of, just a little bit more means he's incentivized to give you more information and help you out.
Okay.
So once you've done that, there's a final document that establishes what you are buying the property for and all the details, right? And this is called an Ulta Statement. So the Ulta Statement will indicate what you're buying, who the property address is, who the buyer and the seller is. This is just a sample, and give you various information about when you're closing and any other requirements. Now here, you'll have the seller side, and on here is the buyer side. And it'll enumerate for you the purchase price, the earnest money, what the taxes are, and we'll talk about tax prorations in a minute, and any one of your other closing costs. So each of these will have different closing costs that are related to the closing and title fees. So different title fees will vary, and that's something that your attorney can also negotiate to make sure that you're not being overcharged at closing. So just to get back, we are the Better Informed Housing Corporation. We are located at 218 North Jefferson, Chicago, Illinois, 60616. The phone number is 312-533-2688. And the website is www.betterinformed.org. And you can email us at abers@betterinformed.org. Better Informed Housing Corporation is an Illinois nonprofit providing education information to communities about real estate. So that is essentially the crux of the real estate closing. Once you're done, you'll be signing all those documents.
Yes.
You'll be signing the Ulta Statement. And the one last thing I do want to address, which I didn't get to, is the tax prorations. Now, that's really confusing. We should probably spend an entire show on taxes because it's really confusing. But the bottom line is, what your attorney has to do is to make sure that you are getting the proper tax credit, okay,
Yeah.
for the time that you did not own the property.
Okay.
So if you closed today, for example, on, what's the date today?
It's the 20th of
Today's
March.
the 20th of March.
Yep.
So if you close today, March 20th, and today you own the property, your tax prorations should cover the entire time period before you owned the property, should be credited to you at closing.
Got it.
Okay?
Okay.
Now, it's a very complex calculation, and we'll probably spend some time over the next couple weeks, or the next couple months, talking about how to do a tax proration. Okay?
Okay.
But right now, you want to make sure that you get that tax proration. Your contract will say 105%, 110%, or 100%, depending on what was negotiated between the attorneys and at the time of signing. But that is a key piece. Usually when there's a mistake that takes place, it's usually on the tax prorations because it's such a complex calculation. But any decent attorney who's doing real estate closings on a regular basis for buyers will know exactly how to handle that.
Now, is there a document I'm going to get that's going to show that I have title to the property as well?
Oh, absolutely. So you'll get a warrant. So at closing, the seller will give you a deed,
Okay.
which says, they warranty deed, which says you own the property free and clear from any liens and whatever and other asset stuff. But you may be subject to taxes, may be subject to easements or other building not building violations, municipal codes, municipal codes about how setbacks, etc. But essentially, it's free and clear, okay, subject to government rights, which government always takes first.
Right.
Then they'll get a bill of sale, which says anything that's left in the property belongs to you. So if they forget their Maserati in the garage,
Yeah.
guess what? You're lucky you got yourself a Maserati. Believe it or not, it's happened. So anything left in the garage, in the house, the refrigerator, the appliances, and usually that's enumerated in the contract, all those things will be part of the contract, and that's what the bill of sale will cover. Then you'll get an affidavit of title. The affidavit of title states you have that no work has been done on the property leading up to the closing.
Got it.
So I think we only have a few minutes left.
Yes.
The last thing you'll get, or one of the major things, is you're going to get title policy, which guarantees, if the seller did it right, that you got the property free and clear. And if you have a problem with that, we'll spend another session talking about problems with title.
Okay.
But that title policy will guarantee you're getting free and clear. And if anybody down the road comes up and says, "Hey, I own this property," or "You owe money to me because of this property," and it's from the prior owner, you can bring a claim and sue the title company. And we'll talk about that in another session. So,
Yes. So, it sounds like it's a very involved and daunting process, but, I mean, is this a complex process, or can anyone really walk through this?
any good attorney should be able to walk you through it.
Okay.
And I think if you need a good attorney and a good real estate agent to fight for you on your side to make sure you get the right property and the right thing and who are protecting your interests.
Right.
And I know I'm an attorney, and so I'm going to say this, but your attorney and your inspector, I can't tell you how important they are to make sure you get the right one and pay an extra $50 or $100 or even $200 just to do it right. So, with that said, I think we have running out of time. My name is Faisad Al-Khatib. I'm an attorney with the Better Informed Housing Corporation. And this is Carl Dreyer. You can reach us at neighbors@betterinformed.org. Our website is www.betterinformed.org. And we thank you for listening in to us. We wish you all the best, and good luck on your buy.
Have a good night.